Hello, lovely people. So, today on this episode, we're going to talk about my journey I had yesterday. I thought it would be really interesting I think that this is going to be a really important part of my integration, as well as maybe giving you more of my perspective of what a journey looks like. So, yesterday, usually I plan out my journeys. I want to take them on a specific day, maybe at a specific time, and I just feel really called to do that. So, for example, I took a little journey on 11/11 because that date is amazing. I want it to be like the new the new psilocybin day, like 420 basically for weed. So, but yesterday on 11/18 I was getting a lot of signs the day before and that day. 11/18. So what I do when I take the psilocybin is I write down the exact time that I took them on my hand with like a Sharpie or a dark pen. And I think one of the most life-changing experiences I've had was at 11/18 in the morning. I don't remember the day. It was earlier this year, but it was at 11/18. So 11/18 is fairly symbolic for me. And I felt really called to take them yesterday. It was also like 63, 64 degrees outside, which is crazy. I mean, I live in New England. I live in Connecticut, and it's like a week away from Thanksgiving, and it's 63, 64 degrees outside. So I thought that was a perfect time to do it. I'm also in the apartment, so I've had one other experience, technically on 11/11, like I did try to go on a journey, but I wasn't necessarily feeling as much because I didn't go crazy at all. So, the very first time, which was before then, I was in my apartment. I had blacked out all of the windows. Sometimes I want to go in a cave and be in a basement, like no sun. I just want to be in the dark. And that's what I did last time. And if you've ever taken psilocybin indoors, it's definitely more uncomfortable than it would be outdoors. So my very first time was very uncomfortable, and I knew it was uncomfortable because I was fighting the feeling. I was like, ugh, maybe I shouldn't have done this. I was all by myself, and I just didn't feel very comfortable. So I took the opportunity yesterday because it was so beautiful outside, like, oh, I could actually be outside if I wanted to. And that's why I think the summer and just the warm months are really a great time to go on journeys, just because it's so warm outside. You get to feel the sun and really feel connected to nature. It's more of an outward experience. When you're inside, it's more of an inward experience. So I was thinking it'll be a lot less scary. There's a lot less anticipation because I had just decided to do it that morning. So very little anticipation, little anxiety. It's beautiful outside. So I felt comfortable to do it. And I do journey by myself. I've journeyed many a time. So I feel comfortable, and at that point where I don't really need a trip sitter. This may not apply to everyone, especially if it's your first time, or definitely I would recommend getting a trip sitter. But for this occasion, I did not have one. And so what I did was I like to write down all of the variables. This is a very new thing. There's not a ton of research published, at least that I'm aware of. So it's super important for me to, this is an experiment. It's just one big experiment. So I am my subject. So it's important for me to write down the variables, which are set and setting. Set and setting is really, really important. It really matters that you are somewhere that feels comfortable, familiar. You feel like you can express yourself, and it's a safe environment. As quiet as possible is important, but soundproof headphones are very, very helpful. Having a trip sitter. This one I skipped, but if you are more of a beginner when it comes to psilocybin, then having a sitter is very, very important. Not just having a sitter that, you want someone that you can trust, that you can share your secrets with, maybe someone who has experienced this before so they can tell you what to expect and help you calm down. I think that is really important. Your dosage. So mine was, I think a lot of people, they assume that 1.5 grams is kind of the standard. And that's what I did for my very first time. And actually, no, my very first time was wonderful. It was outside, it was last year. And I did that, and I didn't feel overwhelmed or anything like that. But this year, when I did it, it was also inside. It was too cold to be outside, so it was inside. And I felt super nauseous. I felt really uncomfortable and icky. So from there, I started going down in my dosage. So 0.5 is like a really good time for me. It's really important to know, maybe what your size is. I'm kind of a tinier person. I only weigh maybe 130 pounds and I'm 5'2". So based on, my body type, I don't necessarily need as much as someone who would need to experience the same amount if they were a little bigger than me. If they're smaller, I would suggest going lower, but that is kind of my theory on that. Of course, my main experimentation has been on myself, so it's kind of hard to tell, but I always suggest that if you are a beginner, start small, because I think some people are like, well, I really want to feel it, so I want to take a bigger dose so I can handle it for their first time, and that's when maybe it's like, okay, I did way too much, I never want to do this again. So always go smaller. You can always take more later, but you cannot undo it. You got to write it out. There's no going back. Like when you're drunk and something happens and you sober up real quick. That doesn't happen with the mushrooms. You are in it, you're locked in. You got to just ride that wave. So, yesterday I took 0.66 grams, and another thing to know is how they're consumed and what you've eaten or when you ate last. So I'm still, of course, experimenting myself. I have read things that if you eat before, you won't be nauseous. If you eat way before, you won't be nauseous. I think that every trip is different. So for me, I think I ate like a bagel maybe an hour before I took them. So for me, that was actually really good. I didn't have like so much in my stomach. So the idea is you don't want to eat like a really heavy meal right before. Some people say you should wait 3 to 4 hours after you eat a meal to take them so that you have more of an empty stomach and you can metabolize it, and there's not as much stuff in there so you can feel it more. And yeah, so But I found that eating only a little bit before and not something huge did help my stomach. I think when I have more of an empty stomach, I feel more nauseous. So that's just my personal experience. And I took mine at 11:35. And I write that down, right? I take the time and I write it on my hand so that when I'm looking at the time I can see, okay, I'm like an hour in, I'm 2 hours in, because when you are experiencing this, it's the perception of time is very, very wonky. You have no idea what time it is unless, you're looking at the sun and you can tell. But otherwise, time is very weird. It's kind of like all time is just happening at once. It honestly feels like it can feel very long, but it can also feel like, oh wow, like it's over now already. But that's important. I do want to say that normally I consume them. I take a coffee grinder. It's just like a coffee bean grinder. I bought it for $20 on Amazon. And I put them in there and I grind them up really small into really small little particles, and I make tea with them. So I usually have like green tea, something that's soothing. I got so nauseous the second time that I was very desperate to try to mitigate the nauseousness. That's probably the worst part of going on a trip, is the nauseousness, specifically with psilocybin. I haven't taken like LSD or anything else, so I could not speak to that. But the nausea can be pretty hardcore. And this isn't to scare anybody. I think that it's really important to know what to expect, because sometimes it can be like, oh wow. The mushrooms are very magical, an incredible. It's just incredible that this stuff grows on the earth, but you also really, really need to respect that they are a very powerful substance that it just must be respected. Otherwise, it will not respect you. And again, not to scare you, but I think it's important to talk about this. So originally, right, I put them in the coffee grinder, grind them up, put them in a mug with some green tea, maybe some ginger. That'll really help with the stomach. And I usually drink it, and it kicks in about 15 minutes. And it's since it's already pretty much, grinded up very small, it's already chewed up essentially. It just is a matter of time of it getting in your bloodstream and your body absorbing it, and it happens very, very quick, and you're in it. It's not like a slow come up. It's kind of like, okay, we're ready to rock. I also want to point out that because I think the diuretic in the tea does help metabolize and make you feel it a little bit more. It also shortens the duration of the trip. So usually trips last, people say, between 4 to 6 hours. It'll probably be only 3 to 4 hours if you drink them with the tea, but it's also more intense, and the come up is very, very fast. So that's one way. And also the tea, is meant to soothe the stomach. So that is one way. Obviously, another way is just eating them. Some people can eat them with different foods because the flavor might not be the best. And the only thing that I would say to that is it's going to take a lot longer for it to metabolize in your body. So if you don't have anything with it, you just eat them straight, your body isn't metabolizing food as well. So if you eat them with food, it's going to take longer for you to start to feel it, and the feeling might be diminished a lot. I remember my friend I think they took about 2, bigger than me, taller than me, and they had them like I ate mine before my pizza, and my friend ate like a whole pizza and then had the mushrooms right after and basically didn't feel it. So my suggestion, don't eat a whole pizza before right before you do that. Let's see what else. So yesterday I just consumed them with nothing. I just had them with some water, chewed them up as finely as I can. I think a part of the stomach thing is that it's trying to break it down even more, and it might not help if you're trying to swallow them whole. So I would suggest to chew it as much as you possibly can. Take it with a good amount of water, or have it in the tea. There's a lot of different methods. People can lemon tech, so that's you put like really citrus, like you put a lemon, squeeze a lemon in a cup, and you soak the mushrooms in there for a while, and that helps to break it down. It kind of is I've never done this before, but the lemon juice mirrors the acid in your stomach and breaks it down even more, so that when it's time, it's gonna be ready. I also want to say that citrus increases the feeling. Like you feel it a lot more when you have citrus, so lime and lemon, and but that also shortens the duration. I've never done ayahuasca. I'm very interested, but I've never done it. But I've heard that it's the opposite. So if you are maybe not having the best trip on ayahuasca, you can have like an orange or a lemon and the effects will start to wear off. Whereas the psilocybin is kind of the opposite. It makes the experience more intense, but it also shortens the duration of the period. So take what you will with that. Again, as a first timer or a beginner, I wouldn't suggest that, but just some useful knowledge. If you don't necessarily want the trip to be more intense, maybe staying away from citrus that day would be beneficial. Let's see. So writing down the time, getting yourself prepped. So basically what I did, I'm gonna stop kind of with the suggestions, and I'm gonna more so talk about my experience specifically. And so I was really eager to get outside. It's been really cold. It's fall. It's gonna be winter very soon. So it's definitely more of a indoor vibe in New England. I'm in complete hermit mode. I don't leave the house very, very much, but I'm also like not hating that. I love being alone and doing whatever I want to do. It's amazing. So yesterday was gorgeous outside. The sun was shining, no clouds in the sky, and I went outside. I usually sit in a beach chair outside. Beach chair is kind of like just shorter to the ground, so you feel way more grounded, and it's also supportive. So when one takes the psilocybin, you feel very, very grounded and very heavy. Like gravity takes a fucking hold and you are brought right to the ground. So relaxing your body as much as possible. At least this is my experience. I have friends who will be like, "You want to go on a walk?" And I'm like, "Ugh, I just want to sit here like a rock and not go anywhere." So, of course, depends on the experience of the person, but I went outside, sat on my beach chair. I had a little towel on the ground so that I could put my feet on it. I had my Bose speaker, Bluetooth speaker, so that I could listen to some music. I actually have a Spotify playlist called Camel, which is my partner's name. It's what I call him. His name's Cameron, but I call him Camel. And the Camel playlist is amazing. It's like Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong, very old school but whimsical and magical, and it's lovely. And I was just listening to that outside, and I was listening to one of Louis Armstrong's songs, What a Wonderful World, and I was just staring at the trees and soaking up the sun. Another way that I mitigate the nauseousness is by smoking weed. So, some people will say, sometimes the weed counter affects the mushrooms. Some say that it increases the effect of the mushrooms, and I say it's both. So my theory is that depending on how much of the psilocybin you take, you need to take more of that than you would be smoking weed. So for me, at least, if I'm taking 0.3 or less grams of psilocybin, the weed is going to overpower it. But if I take more than that, then the weed will enhance it, and it really helps, I think, with the nausea. And it's not like I even really feel high off the weed. It's mostly the psilocybin. I just think that they work together to help each other out, both plant medicines. And so I was out there doing that. I was lighting some incense. Sometimes if you are a woo-woo person like me, I like to take sage or incense and kind of smudge the area of where I'm going to be. So I had lit an incense that was around me, kind of a way to protect me. Because when you are on the mushrooms, okay, you are very, very vulnerable. You're very sensitive to everything around you, everybody's energies. So another reason why having a reliable sitter, that's very important. Sounds, you're very, very receptive to sounds. So it's very important to make sure that you're safe and away from like the muggles who are not tripping. So it's important to try to make your environment as safe as possible from normal life, I would suggest. I get a little paranoid as well, so yes, that is my advice. So when I was outside, I was just relaxing. It's more of an outward experience. Like I said, when you're outside, you're more focused on nature, connected to nature, and you just feel like you are a part of it. You and nature are just one, which is lovely, and you get to appreciate it a lot more. So I think after a little bit, I was like, okay, I'm good with being outside. I kind of want to be inside. I feel like I'm just very vulnerable right now, and we have neighbors, so I didn't want any neighbors to be stumbling upon me. I didn't want any interaction with anybody at all, because that is where something so wonderful can go wrong, especially when those people don't really know that you're under the influence. So I felt really called to go inside. Going to the bathroom is a whole thing. It's very weird operating in a human body when you are taking this plant medicine. But I went inside in the apartment. I laid down my yoga mat by the door, and I had the door open, and the sun was just streaming on me, and I felt like a cat. You know how cats, they go towards a sunny spot because it's really cozy. So that's basically what I did. Listening to music. Every time I try to listen to Everything in Its Right Place by Radiohead with my soundproof headphones, it's very, very gnarly. It's like you're being transported somewhere else. And that song specifically, I really recommend listening to it. It's very trippy. And, the title basically says what it's about. It's like everything in its right place. It just is a great reminder that everything is happening for a reason. I look around at the things and the placement of all of my things, and it's like, yes, everything is exactly where it's meant to be. It's very nice and very centering and helps me trust the universe more. I listened to a few more songs, and then I was just feeling really heavy. I needed much more support than the yoga mat was giving me, so I went to my bed. You feel really, really tired. Like, your body feels really heavy, and gravity is like 10 times. Like, you're just being pulled down, and you're realizing, wow, being a human is not easy. It's not an easy thing to do. So it really forces you to relax your body. And I went into my room and I was just listening to more music. I've done this once before, is I take a mirror and I just look at myself. The first time I did that, and the only other time I did that, was very, very powerful for me. It was almost as if, like, the person looking into the mirror was like my own parent, and then the person looking back at me was like my inner child, and she was very, very sad. And I realized that I hardly ever look at the mirror if I'm not trying to like fix myself. So looking in the mirror and looking in my eyes was very powerful. So I wanted to see what that would bring me this time. And I was looking in my eyes, and it was very hard to look at myself. I was being very critical of myself, and I'm usually not. I'm usually like, wow, you're so beautiful and amazing, which, it's taken a long time to practice that. But I was just like nitpicking every little thing on me. Like, I was wearing this really oversized sweater. It was making me look really much bigger than I was. And I was looking at, like, I mean, I'm not ashamed, but I have like hairs that grow above my lips. So I could see that. And it's completely normal to do that. My throat's getting dry. It's completely normal, okay, for women to, I'm a fairly hairy person, so yeah, hair grows on me everywhere. So ladies, don't be ashamed. And I was just looking at myself and being very, very critical of myself, and after I was being critical of myself, I couldn't even look at myself in the eye. It was too painful and too difficult to do so. So I think that's definitely something that I want to work on, is defining beauty for me. And beauty is definitely not what is on the outside. Like, what we are experiencing and living, this human experience, is like, this is a shell for our soul. It's not a direct reflection of our beauty. I think that's wild. But after my little mirror experiment, I could not look at myself anymore. I was listening to the music again, and I was really realizing that the music that we listen to really does affect our emotions, which makes sense. I have different playlists for different things, different time periods. So just keep in mind, if you're listening to a sad song, you're probably going to feel more sad than you did before you listened to it. So music has really a lot of control over your emotions and your mental state. And also, it's a very powerful tool, like nostalgia. So I remember driving with my dad. My dad would come pick me up from Cape Cod to Connecticut every other weekend, and we would spend 5 hours in the car every weekend listening to Red Hot Chili Peppers. They're my favorite band, and every time I listened to the Red Hot Chili Peppers, like yesterday, I was being transported back to those car rides with my dad. So depending on when you listen to the song the first time, or when that song really had an impact, I feel like it is a tool that helps us remember, and is really nostalgic, can be very nostalgic and transports you back into that place that you were when you listened to it before. So after that, I heard a very tiny voice in my head saying, let's put down the headphones and let's stop listening to the music. So when you are on the mushrooms, your body knows. Your body knows. It's crazy. Like right I said, I didn't want human interaction, right? So right after I went inside, I should say, my neighbor had like left and like would have seen me if I stayed out like a minute longer. So the body knows what it should do next. So that's kind of like, if you're a sitter, I would suggest, giving the person free range to go wherever they want. I've had friends who like to go in the middle of the woods, be right in the center of nature. They want to walk around, they want to be by themselves in a bed. Your body just knows. And another thing, you can prepare for whatever you want to happen, but your body will probably have different plans. And you're locked very much into your intuition when you are experiencing the plant medicine. So, you know what to do next. So, I listened to my inner voice, my inner voice, and it was really my higher self who was trying to talk to me. At least that's my perception of what was happening. And I'm a spiritual person, so I believe that my higher self is kind of always with me and has really great advice and can help me see things from different perspectives. So by stopping listening to the music, I could hear my voice more. I think music can also be a distraction. TV, technology in general can very much be a distraction from living life in the present. And let me see, every time I go on these adventures, I take notes the next day because it's really important for the integration piece. Okay, let's see. Because I really had some profound realizations yesterday that really helped me in my healing. Let's see. Yes, the music. Okay. So the first thing that I was thinking about was a little background first is that I have grown up very boy crazy. My mom kind of instilled that it's very important for me to find a man, and obviously society also promotes that kind of idea, and that we as women are here to serve men. And I love my partner so much, but in the back of my mind, I've been thinking about my ex-partners, and like what if that would have worked out type of thing. And I basically asked my higher self, like, why do I keep fucking thinking about these people? Like, they're gone, and I know I have like the best person for me at home who just loves me so much. He treats me like a queen, and he makes me feel very, very special every day. And I was like, why do I keep thinking about these other dudes that were in my life? And my higher self basically said, I think what it is that you just aren't being accepted or seen or heard by these people. These people are not the people that you deserve to have in your life as a partner, and being unheard and unseen is a thing, that your father would make you feel. And I know it's not, I don't take that personally at all, but it was kind of like, well, you feel very unseen and unheard by your father. So and you desperately want to be accepted. Like, in the back of my mind, I do want to be accepted by my dad, but that's also kind of an old belief that I probably will shed today. It's also the lunar eclipse and full moon today, so maybe that's something that I write down that I want to get rid of. But like feeling the need to be accepted and be seen and heard by these men in your life. And that's why it keeps coming up. Let's see. And then after that, I was thinking about my dad and men in general, and the theme of men crying has been coming up a lot for me and Cameron. Not necessarily because Cameron's feeling emotional, but we watched like The Bachelorette the other day, and how seeing men cry is a very rare thing. I think that, you know, people see men as those who like have privilege, right? And I think that it's a complete trade-off. Women are expected to have emotions. We're expected to be emotional people. And it's more common for women to show and express their emotions than it is for men. So it's more common to be exposed by that situation, and how people, when men don't really express emotions, when they finally do, people don't necessarily know how to react, don't know how to act in that situation. I remember I've only seen my dad cry a couple of times, and that was very uncomfortable for me. It's kind of like, I don't know what to do. You're meant to be the rock. You're meant to be the one that doesn't show emotions, and now you're doing that, and I don't know what the heck to do. I remember Cameron expressing his emotions and, feeling sad and crying in front of me the first couple of times. And I was so uncomfortable. I was like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, he's not meant to be showing emotions. This isn't what society has taught us about men, is to see this and witness this. And I was very uncomfortable because I just didn't know how the fuck to act. I was like, I don't know what's happening right now. It's taken me those first couple of times to get used to it, and I have realized that me being uncomfortable by the fact that, my partner is expressing these emotions, that's not going to encourage him to keep expressing his emotions. You know what I mean? It's like society says, man, you're not allowed to express your emotions. You're not allowed to cry. You can just act like everything is peachy keen. And the man, assumably just buries all those emotions deep within, and carries that shit with them. And those feelings are not felt. And those things are just put into a box, and they stay in the body and manifest in another way. And when society tells men not to express emotions, and men, that shit erupts within them, and like they have to let it out, that is when people who are on the receiving end of this don't know what the fuck to do, because this isn't what society has taught us, that men can express their emotions. They have to be these robots who don't feel anything. It's crazy. So I think a huge part of this is that we, as men or women, I just strongly encourage us to be accepting, show unconditional love, and hold space for those people who are feeling emotional, whether you're a man or a woman. And, maybe in your family and your background, emotions weren't, they were very much discouraged. I think it's important for us to be able to hold that space for men and women and show them, I am a safe space. You can show your emotions and be vulnerable with me, and I'm going to love you. So that was a huge realization that I had yesterday, specifically with, I'm not sure if I've shared this story, but my grandpa had an island in Maine. It sounds more luxurious than it was, but it was also really amazing. We had a cabin on an island in the middle of the lake that was looking over Mount Katahdin, which is on the Appalachian Trail, I believe. And it was a wonderful place where we could escape nature, be with each other, be present with each other, and really enjoy each other's time. So it was me, Cameron, my dad, and my grandpa, who's my dad's dad. And little background, my dad's dad and dad, they don't have the best relationship. They have worked together for years. My dad's worked for my grandpa for forever until now. But there's already tension and resistance there, I think, from the generational trauma. Expressing emotions was not tolerated or accepted. So I'm sure that's how, my grandpa's parents felt. I'm sure that's how my dad felt about his parents. And I am a very sensitive person, so I have always expressed my emotions and cried when I needed to cry. Maybe not always, but for the most part, I feel the feelings. And it's more acceptable because I'm a female, and females are expected to be emotional while men are just villainized and dehumanized and not expected to feel anything. So what happened was we were in Maine, trapped on this island, right? And I said something that triggered my dad. And my dad, he bottles up these emotions. And I think a lot of people do this. I'm not singling him out at all. And it finally erupted. I am someone who does express my emotions and how I feel. So I think just doing that gave him permission to feel that he could express his emotions to me. And with very little experience, I'm sure, in expressing those emotions, it's hard to know how to express, especially when it's not encouraged to do so. So it's like when it finally happens, you never know how it can come out. And my partner was telling me that he was taking this class called Men and Masculinity at his school, and talking about how those emotions, right, they're not encouraged, they're bottled up, and those eventually manifest into anger. So what happened was my dad got very angry and was threatening to beat up my partner because my partner is probably one of the most important people in my life. And if you threatened to beat up my partner, I don't know. I don't know what would have happened if that actually did happen, but he was just lashing out and trying to bring me down. His vibe bring me down, and it was a very difficult time. I was begging my grandpa to take me back to land, because I'm stranded in an island with my dad who's raging. And I was just reliving that experience, and I was imagining 50 years of emotions and being beaten up and battered and all of that stuff just coming out at me at once. And at the time, I very much took it personally, and I felt very unsafe and very angry towards my father. But last night or yesterday, when I was able to relive this kind of experience, I felt really sad for him. To be honest, I feel honored that he was able and felt comfortable enough to express those emotions in front of me, though it wasn't the healthiest way to do so, and I don't blame him at all. Men are encouraged to express themselves in a healthy way, or in any way at all. And I felt honored. I felt that I gave my dad permission to be emotional by doing that for myself. And I just felt really sad. And I remember crying yesterday and uh, crying for my dad. Like, it's really devastating. I couldn't imagine. I think it is a trade-off. Men do have privileges, white men specifically, but also in this day and age, white men are written off completely. They're monsters. They are not human anymore. And men in general, uh, they're just meant to be the rock. They're meant to be the order. They're meant to just keep everything contained and keep their cool all the time, which I could not imagine for myself. That's so my heart was just breaking for men in general, and I was kind of realizing, like, I think there needs to be more acceptance of men experiencing those emotions. And I remember, like, I'm trying to have my own business, right? So uh I think in the beginning I was like, okay, I want to work with women because I get women and I am a woman. But I don't want to close the door for men because I think men could use support as well. And especially someone who will not judge them and encourages them to express that emotion. So I feel like that was kind of a big realization for me, is I'm kind of meant to be here to help everybody. And if you are a man or a woman or anybody who, you know, doesn't feel encouraged to express their emotions, please message me. Uh, this isn't meant to be like a shameless plug, or I don't know what I just said, but my Instagram handle is Lizzie, LizzieBee, pollinator, and I will hold all the space for you because I can't imagine living in a world where emotions and expression is not tolerated. I don't want to live in a world like that. And crying is very healthy. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's an incredibly healthy way of cleansing and clearing those emotions out of our body so that those feelings can be felt. So that was a huge thing that I realized yesterday. Let's see what else. Oh yes, the day before yesterday I was listening to Ram Dass. Ram Dass has an album with East Forest and it's amazing. And I also have Ram Dass's book, and the front of the book says remember, and it says be here now, be here now. If you have time to look at the cover of this book, I really recommend it. It's very psychedelic, and I was just staring at that. I felt very called to pull that from the couch and bring that to the bed with me. And like that song I mentioned before, everything in its right place, right? So that was in the right place. I was looking, remember, be here now, be here now. And after I felt through those emotions, I felt those feelings. And by the way, I can look back and that experience that I had in Maine, that was a very negative experience for me. I actually want to get a sleeve of the view of that place because it's amazing. But it has not always been a positive memory for me, that's for sure, until yesterday, and I was able to really see it from a different perspective and really change that neurological pathway and change that trauma into just unconditional love. And that really was helpful in healing my relationship with my father. So after I felt those feelings, I was feeling my higher self was telling me over and over, I'm so sorry that you went through that. I'm so sorry you went through that. And I definitely needed to hear that. I needed to, I needed someone else to validate my experience or at least my higher self, to validate my experience, or at least feel that my experience was valid and my emotions were valid. And after that, I felt like complete bliss. And it was like I was in heaven. It's like if you like orgasm, you're just like perpetually orgasm that state. It was like, it felt so good. I was feeling very good, blissed out. I felt like I was in heaven. And when I was reading the remember, the be here now, be here now, be here now, I was remembering that this is what like life feels like outside of this human body. Whether you're a spiritual person or not, I am. And I was like, wow, these this plant medicine is here to help us remember, who we are. And it's also to remember like where we come from, connects us with the universe, and like gives us a little piece of the afterlife, like what life is actually like after this, like how our soul experiences life. And it's just an amazing feeling. I felt very high vibes. Like I felt just warmth radiating throughout my whole body. It was wonderful. And it was kind of like, is this what heaven feels like? And my higher self was kind of like, this is what heaven feels like. You know, we are above the clouds. We dance on the clouds all day. That's why they're constantly changing. And it's just this amazing high vibe energy. So it's kind of like, yeah, these mushrooms are here to help us remember and help us to be here now. And they're helping us to remember that we are very spiritual beings, and like this is what it's like remember. So that was really, really awesome for me. Definitely another note that I could take in the old experimentation book about my experience. And I believe I was thinking about my friend and how I was talking about this in the I Was Lost video or podcast episode, how she really went in a different direction, right? She was more into the Bible, into God and Jesus, and how my friend, I can understand. And this might not even be how she felt, but I'm reading that Ram Dass book, and Ram Dass basically went to India and really didn't know what to do next. He was like, I don't want to be the pilot anymore. I don't want to steer this wheel anymore. I want someone else to steer my wheel for me. So I can totally understand if life is so incredibly overwhelming that it's just, I gotta have someone else steer right now. So that really helped me see from her perspective when it came to, focusing more on the Bible and Jesus and God, and how maybe she just wants someone to steer the wheel for a little bit. And a little bit after that, I was like, okay, like it's probably 4-5 hours in. I was like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do hard work anymore. I just want to zone out and watch TV. And I have been watching Paris in Love, which is a reality show about Paris Hilton and her fiance, and it's on Peacock. And I've always felt very drawn to Paris, and of course you can pull these different things and this persona that she displays, but I think she's a very admirable woman. And she was talking about how her parents, so she had a documentary called This Is Paris, about how she went to a boarding school and it was basically a torture camp, and she kept it hidden and all of that stuff inside, bottled up for years until very recently. And she was talking about how her parents haven't even watched it, and how her parent, like, she hasn't had this conversation with her parents yet. Her parents won't listen. And I felt my heart breaking for her, not feeling seen or heard by her parents. I feel like it's very relatable. I remember trying to explain to my dad my experiences and trying to give him a perspective of my life and why our relationship isn't what I want it to be or what he wants it to be. But sometimes I also realize that sometimes the truth and sometimes things are just too painful to bear, too painful to talk or think about. I honestly referenced this to global warming. I was thinking about this yesterday. Global warming. And I hope this doesn't offend anybody. I very much try to do my part in taking care of this earth. I do my part. And I try to be responsible about plastic and waste and garbage and stuff like that. This is probably going to be controversial. So I think at some point I heard, global warming is a hoax. And, whether you believe in this or whether you don't believe in it, this is just my opinion. And I honestly don't know what to believe anymore. Before it was kind of like global warming, it's just easier to think that it's fake, right? It's just easier to think that it's not real, because when you think about it, I am a very, very sensitive person. I consciously filter certain things in my life because I cannot handle it. I cannot watch the news. I can't follow politics ever. I just ignorance for me is just sometimes the best, because it's like I want to fix everything, but I know I just can't. And my body and my state just cannot handle it. I can't handle it. So sometimes just things are too painful to think about. And I think that that's really one of those things. And that's definitely something for me to reflect on. But sometimes things are just too painful to think about. And maybe that's the same thing with my dad. He can't think about the things that he's done to me. And my mom and Paris's parents, stuff like that. And at the end of that episode, she was talking about how during interviews, she's very scared of what to say next, because in the torture camp, that the provost school, if she didn't say or act or do things the right way, quote unquote, then there would be punishment. So she says that there's still this anxiety in her, that it's just easier for someone to tell her exactly what to say instead of saying the wrong thing, or, just doing the wrong thing. And she was saying how she feels like a Barbie doll, how she just feels like she's just there to sit there and look pretty, and people to play with, and people, like, don't talk and just sit there and be pretty. And I was just thinking, like, wow, that really struck a chord with me. And I'm sure it could be really relatable to all women, because in this society we are very much told to shut up, look good, sit in a corner, you're here to serve men, and not express yourself and not be yourself. So I thought that was very powerful, a powerful way to end my experience yesterday. And I do have more notes. I just don't want to leave this super long so that nobody listens to it. Not that it really doesn't matter if anybody listens to it, but it really does help that I was able to talk about this. I think integration is probably the most important aspect of like taking psilocybin. Of course, you know, the actual trip itself is very important and can be very profound, but also remembering everything that happened on that trip and writing it down and talking to other people about it and talking to you about it is very important in integrating those things that I learned. So I hope this was interesting. I am very open to talking more about this. If you like this, if you have any questions on my experience or any best practices, please let me know. I'm still kind of on a hiatus from Instagram, depending on when you're listening to this. So I'll still be taking time for myself, but I'm really hoping to host courses and best practices for psilocybin. And yeah, I have a lot of ideas, and I'm very excited about them. I'm just not 100% ready yet. But if you listen to this whole thing, thank you so much for seeing me and hearing me. I appreciate you so much. I love you all so, so much. I hope you have an amazing day or night, and I will see you next time.